Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I go to church, right? I'm not super religious, but I go to church and I keep my religion to myself, and that's fine. It's neither here nor there. I don't want to talk about it a whole lot, but religions, no matter what religion you are, is kind of the original community, right? I mean, it's just there's lots of community in religion, and I remember it was probably 2018, 2019, going to church, and most religions, well, I don't know. I just know in my religion, I'm Catholic, there's a portion in the Catholic Mass where you greet other people. We call it the sign of peace. And you shake hands with people. And there was a woman in front of me, and I shook her hand. And then I saw her turn around and grab a little bottle of hand sanitizer and rub her hands. I'm not offended. I'm not easily offended, I should say. I wasn't offended. I really thought it was kind of funny that she did that. But then, COVID hit, and we got into this social distancing, and there was none of that happening in church. It was, well, we weren't having church for a while. And then when even church came back, we weren't back to that. And even right now, it's just starting to come back. It's just starting to come back where people are comfortable shaking hands with one another, having physical contact. And I remember during the COVID lockdown that I probably read it in posts on social media and heard people talk about it in podcasts or on radio programs saying the handshake is dead. We will never shake hands again. And I thought to myself, that's not true. There's no way. I probably said it outwardly. There's no way. The handshake will be back. Hugs will be back. All this stuff will be back. I get it. This has been a trying time, and people are really afraid, but they'll be back. And we've been through worse things as humanity goes. In 1918, there was a plague. There was a pandemic, and there have been several through the years. And we're more knowledgeable now than ever before, and have more medical might to throw at these things than we've ever had. So I knew that the notion of handshakes and hugs and pats on the back, I knew they would come back. It was just a matter of time. We just need to forget a little bit about about what the pandemic was about. And in hindsight, COVID-19 wasn't exchanged via handshakes. It was more of an airborne virus, and I'm not going to get into any of that. But this physical touch, these handshakes, these hugs, these pats on the back, are really important to our relationships, personal relationships and professional relationships. And there are lots of things that these things do for us. The first thing is handshakes really help us establish trust. I mean, a good handshake, not one that's overpowering. But with a good handshake, it really kind of conveys confidence and trustworthiness. And there are actual studies out there that show that people who have good handshakes are just perceived much better. It was a study, I think it was done by Jerry Berger at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And what they did was they brought students into a situation where they thought they were going to go through interviews. They would shake the various people's hands. And when I say various people's, researchers, people welcoming them in, it was a series of people, and they would shake all these people's hands. And they would go ahead and they would rate the people based on their handshake. Was it a good handshake? Was it a bad handshake? And then they brought them into the interviewer, and the interviewer would not shake anybody's hand. Would just sit and interview the person, but then would make a judgment as to how hireable the person was. And there was a strong correlation between what people thought were good handshakes and the hireability of people. Go figure. I don't, why that's all connected. I don't know. But it is. And, handshakes have gone back, human touch has gone back years and years and years. Um, you know, Building rapport, obviously, hugs and pats on the back, really create a sense of rapport with people. And fosters a closer connection with people. Now, not everybody is into those sorts of things. I mean, certainly hugging. I know some people where I know one woman where it's like, "Hey, I'm a hugger," right? And that's what she says right from you meet her for the first time. I'm a hugger, and she'll give you a hug, and and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. I know guys, they're into hugging. That's okay. I'm totally okay with that. Not everybody is, and I think you need to know your audience. And you know, I have people that just they aren't into hugging. I mean, just they're just not, and you kind of get that sense, and you need to kind of know. You need to be able to read the room, so to speak, right? There are people I know where it's just like, yeah, it's just handshake is enough, and you just get that sense from them and you can just you can see how they interact with other people and you get that sense, and tend not to try and push those bounds. I don't want to make people uncomfortable. You shouldn't make people uncomfortable, so you kind of have to again read the room, get understanding of people. A lot of times with people when meeting them for the first time, it's a handshake, and then it's just I get a sense about them, and they're okay with hugging, and that's where it leads. But it certainly builds rapport with them. And again, networking is all about know, like, and trust. But these handshakes, these hugs, these pats on the back, they're a great way of communicating non-verbally. You get a sense. I mean, when somebody's you know touching you on the shoulder because it's hey, or you're in trouble, right? Um, it's just the way it is. We read these things, and it's just we're not taught these things necessarily. We just read them, and we've read them over time. But these physical gestures, can convey warmth, support, encouragement, um, without really saying a word. And you kind of know when somebody puts their hand on your shoulder that hey, I'm here. And when you're in trouble too, right? Um, you know, the other thing is it you know these these gestures, these handshakes, hugs, pats on the back, help us create a positive impression. I've talked about the study at University of California, Santa Barbara. There's something to them. Our handshakes are connected to who we are, and having a good handshake and a good interaction, good hugs, good pats on the back, those sorts of things, um, really really allow us to create a positive impression with respect to people. So, I know as we move further away from, the COVID lockdown, of course, they continue to bring it up. And I don't want to get into the politics of all of that. But we're getting back to more normal, where we were. And I knew it would come back. But these sorts of things certainly create team cohesion in AmSpirit Business Connections. There are dozens and dozens of groups, fast approaching hundreds of groups out there. And I don't get to all of them, but I get to a lot of them. And you can really sense what's going on in the group by how people are interacting with one another. I have one group, it's just like, man, everybody's hugging. It's just the thing. And and then I have others where it's not the case. And the one where hugging's the thing, they're really a tight knit group, and they just the holidays are coming up, they're going to have a party and they're going to do a gift exchange, and they're just it's the culture they've built, and it really kind of spills over into how they treat one another and how they do business with one another and how they help each other become successful. So these sorts of things are for them are really important. And then I have other groups where even handshakes are and I just sense that they're just not as close. But what I wanted to just finish up on in talking about the power of this physical touch is a study that I stumbled upon that some psychologists did just to show to show the power of hugging. And what they did was they found 404 healthy adults, and they wanted to do a study to just show wh- what the potential of, what hugging would do for people. So they brought people in, and they gave them a questionnaire, and they asked how often they were hugged, what their own personal perception was. Somebody might say, I never hug, or somebody might say, what, you know, I'm a hugger, right? Where are you on the spectrum? I don't know exactly how they measured it, but they had a way of measuring this. And then they also had a way of measuring how often are you in conflict with somebody. And let's be real, we all have different businesses, and some of us, if you work for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, you're probably constantly in conflict, right? If you're working, I don't know, at a church, you might not run into conflict. I don't know. Emergency room, you're going to run into conflict more than you're going to run into conflict if you're a medical provider in people doing plastic surgery or something like that. So we all have different levels of conflict, and people were asked to, how often you hug, how much conflict do you have. And so what they did then with all that information is they basically they exposed everybody to a cold virus. Basically gave everybody a cold virus. Just the same way as you might get a vaccination. I guess you can take a shot, or take it through the nose. They gave him the cold virus. Now they paid him, right? They paid him $1,000. That's decent money, right? I don't know that I would go for it. Call me a sissy. I hate being sick. I hate being sick. Um, I hate a scratchy throat, or I just go to all lengths to try and protect myself. Doesn't always work. So I don't know that if somebody said, "Hey, we're going to give you a cold virus," you might get a bad cold. If I would take $1,000, I don't know. I don't know. But anyhow, they paid these people, and then they put them in quarantine to just see how the cold virus developed, or what it did the virus develop, and if it did, how severe were the symptoms? Well, there was a strong correlation between people who were hugged often and not getting the cold. And if they got the cold, the symptoms weren't as severe. And so what this goes to show you is that, and they don't totally understand why this all is. I think it has to do um, with the hormone oxytocin, the bonding drug, and that just really is a powerful chemical that really helps our immune system, supports our immune system. Oxytocin. It's that warm feeling you get when you're falling in love, or close contact with children, with pets, and but the people who engaged in lots of hugging didn't uh, didn't get sick, or didn't get as sick. And so it goes to show just the power of physical contact. Um, Maybe it's biological, maybe it's psychological. Does it really matter? Um, there's an importance to having interactions with people, having physical touch. What again, you got to read the room, whatever it is. Even handshakes, pats on the back. You need to make that a part of your routine. I'm not saying you need to be a hugger, um, but these things have to be important to you. Again, these things will build trust. They'll certainly protect you from the common cold, and for me, that's important. Um, but it also helps you build rapport and build community within the networks that you have. So, you know what? We're moving further and further away from COVID. You need to embrace the whole notion of physical touch, and embrace the notion of handshakes, hugs, and pats on the back.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.